Drew Lynch, welcome back to the Growth Now movement, man.
Hey, buddy. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we were talking before I hit record how it's been 2 years since you were here last, and we were talking about just growth from my podcast standpoint, growth from your YouTube and your business in general standpoint, and I think that's kind of where we're going to go because it was interesting. We were talking about goal setting. I wish I was hitting record because it was a really great content.
Yeah, we had a whole other podcast. Like this one's going to be terrible. The one before this was so good. Oh man, I would to listen to that one.
Yeah, exactly. So unfortunately, whoever's listening right now, you're not going to hear the good stuff. Only the shit we're about to put out. But with that being said, man, why don't we just take a couple minutes and just reintroduce you to my audience for those that weren't around 2 years ago, because there's a number of them that weren't. So who is Drew Lynch today?
Most of your audience is babies.
Yes.
Sorry. All right. So yeah, you want me to introduce?
Yeah.
I guess
who is Drew Lynch today?
Oh man, that guy, he's tired. I'll tell you that. That guy's so tired. I don't know how tired I was 2 years ago, but this guy is tired. Well, I mean, I guess, when we did it 2 years ago, it was kind of, I wasn't necessarily fresh off of America's Got Talent, but it was an experience that was kind of, in recent at that time. So that was a few years ago. I had done that show. And since, I kind of have created my own little, social media career in addition to doing stand-up, and it all came from stand-up just because stand-up was what I did, on the show. And then it's kind of that the name of that game is really figuring out how to parlay that exposure into what it is you can build for yourself. Otherwise, if you're not utilizing that opportunity to grow, or if you're not strategizing to look ahead, just one step ahead or two steps ahead, then, you're getting too complacent. You're almost too comfortable with what's happening. And I feel like, for me, my YouTube channel has grown quite a bit. I'm at 1.6 million subscribers, and that'll probably, it'll probably go down after this podcast.
That's
people will listen and be like, man, I wish it was the podcast before this podcast, before he pressed. But I don't know, it's like, and that's just one of the element, and in that way, like, it's almost this weird thing from the YouTube community, because I don't necessarily consider myself to be a YouTuber. I'm not someone who's like, oh, let me try to get in with just this community and stay with just this community and let that label stick to who it is that I am.
Yeah.
But YouTube's community is kind of like that. It is kind of very, I don't want to say, I guess it's cliquey, and so is the stand-up community. So it's this weird predicament I'm in, I guess, if you can call it a predicament. It's almost a challenge, or this new take on what it is that I have to do for myself, where I'm a stand-up and I'm in with that community, and I'm, I guess, a YouTuber, and I actively come up with ideas to create content on that front. But how do I merge or mesh these two audiences? So, in 2 years, if that's really, gosh, Justin, if that's really the time it's been, wow. I feel like since then, it's, we were talking a lot about finding your voice and what's authentic to it.
Yeah.
It's certainly changed a lot since 2 years ago. Since 2 years ago, I was doing predominantly dog-based videos for my channel, and some people kind of knew me as like doing stand-up. Like, they're like, oh yeah, wasn't that guy who kind of did like a thing on America's Got Talent, or that's the guy who stutters, and that's sometimes I find that people, in order to find you, they're so, I don't want to say that they're shallow, but they're simple. Your thing needs to be simple, so it can be like, oh, I get it. So when I was on America's Got Talent, a lot of people were like, oh, that guy stutters, and he makes jokes about his stutter. We're on board with that, or we're not. And then from parlaying that into my YouTube presence and online presence, it was about being like, oh, here's a lot of dog related videos, and also here's that guy who did that thing who stutters still. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's just interesting. It's since then it's changed, even more, I guess, in that I've felt like I didn't have to gravitate so closely to those things. You cling so much, and please cut me off if I'm talking.
No, you're good. Much. You're good. I like where you're going, and it's funny because as we live in this world, and so do I, because I put so much content out, you live in this world where you share so much and then people can kind of watch and see what happens. And I've seen this evolution, like you said, from 2 years ago in your work and everything you're putting out, because then it was, I have to identify as the guy who stutters from America's Got Talent, to whereas now you're like, well, no. And you're actually separating yourself even more from that and separating yourself from the dog vlog, and you're starting to do other content. And actually, I had coffee with Mesa when I was out in LA, and we talked about that. We talked about that thought process of like, how scary was it to make that pivot and that shift away from that comfort zone where you got the 1.5, 1.6 million followers? You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a thing that's scary for everybody. And I think the people that are most likely to sustain their careers are the ones who can adapt to the climates and in different environments and use their skill sets to retrofit that adaptability. So what that means to me is like, as of lately, we found that running out of a lot of, you can run I was doing 2 vlogs a week, and they were just primarily based on my dog, or an angle that was dog related, because that's a way that, that very much pigeonholes your audience, but that makes your audience that is pigeonholed very strong and very sound, because they're there for dog related content. But the issue with that is like, when, like with any business, you need to have a firm grasp on why you're doing it. And I lost that. I lost the sense of that. Like when you do 2 shows a week where you're sending in advance to some editors to cut up, to send to some different editors to make sure that you get upload, which the schedule is very rigid, twice a week. It is on top of traveling to do stand up. It's exhausting. It's just it's one of those things where I was working harder, not smarter, and I was forgetting why I was doing it. And I was reaching out to doing like, news related dog things. Like there was a lot of stuff with airlines declining pets, or people trying to bring pets places, and a lot of people wanted me to weigh in on that. And that's not so much like a passion of mine as it was kind of like me using it to sustain what it was that I had my channel out to be. I'm not somebody who wants to. I don't want to be someone who weighs in on necessarily on my opinion on what's right and wrong for what people do with their pets and not. Like I'm not the end all say all, and I'm not God. I don't want to play God on what the rules are. All I know is I have pretty strict rules for what my dog is. I have standards for what she should be, and then that I think that shows. And I had to kind of calibrate and rethink what we were doing at the time, because I wanted to do that vlog that was with my dog to just kind of get better at joke writing. Like that was all. That's a pretty qualitative goal in itself. Is like, I just wanted to do it so I could get better at being like, here's some bullet points on a thing. My dog did something weird, or this was a place that we traveled to that I want to lament on. And I find that your audience, who's mostly there for all that really juicy dog content, that can start to dwindle when you're starting to put a little bit more of your comedic POV. They're almost less like, They more want you to be a rigid host and less like the reason why I'm doing it.
They want you to be like the guy who's overly bitter about it, talking about whatever you may run into, instead of, hey, this is a comedy show. I am a comedian.
Exactly. And so people will. Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. So what did you like when you made that shift? Like, what did you notice? Because like, I have some friends who are YouTubers who do really well at it, but I still don't quite understand that space. Sure. Like I understand podcasting, whereas whenever I make a shift, I always lose some listeners, and then, since you're finding your authentic voice through time, it grows, right? Is that what you're seeing now?
I mean, it is definitely, it's definitely a thing where, I think the way that YouTube, so there's been a lot of restructures in its algorithm, and in the way that the content is hitting the consumer, and the way that I kind of restructured it, and I'm going to answer your question. It's just I'm giving it like a little, giving it like a prerequisite answer. YouTube has changed its algorithm, and the way that it originally had invented it was for people to have, like, you could have several different things happen on your channel, and people would kind of tune it. Like, in the word channel is not being used in its essence for YouTube. What I thought it wanted was, I made a shift where I was like, okay, last year I created an animated show that I write and cast and then record and then
let's
edit.
just add that to the pile of things you have to do every week. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I did that. And then I started to introduce some stand-up clips in addition to the vlog being just once a week. So the vlog would be once a week. My stand-up clip would be a stand-up clip would be once a week, and then every other week would be like an animated show. That much like with the vlog, I wanted to create so I could strengthen my script writing skills and try to put myself in a scripted format, etc.
Sure.
So I know that this is a labored answer, but I'm saying that to say that YouTube now, in my experience, has been more about like a little bit of that simple marketing that people that simple. The consumer wants that simple marketing. They don't want to come to my channel and be like, wait, I don't quite understand. So wait, he does do dog videos, or he's a stand-up, or is there an animated show? It's more become about, okay, this person does like one thing, and you need to beat the crap out of that one thing. So when I was doing a lot of heavier dog-related videos, like, they were getting a lot more views, and they were getting more traction because it was one thing. It was just like, oh, this is the content that we signed up for. It feels almost like what I should have done is like start a whole separate channel for my stand-up, and then a whole separate channel for this, because that's the best way that people could, I guess, consume that. Now, to answer your question, while I think that I think the pendulum swings in the algorithm, and I think the algorithm is very good about favoring content that's very consistent. But I do think at one point it is going to behoove me and possibly other creators to have all of their content in one space. Yeah. So it's just like, here's all of this. And to me, I think that's what creates that rabbit hole that you kind of want people. The experience you want them to have is to be like, oh, let me go look at this thing. He's got this thing. He's got this. Or if you're not a fan of of two of the things, there's still something that's there for you in terms of the shows that I have to offer on my channel. So I did definitely notice a shift, but it made me happier with like as you'll notice, on your podcast, you might have a listener that's like, this isn't for me anymore, or what have you. It's like, it's nothing, it's hard to not take it personally, but it's nothing that like necessarily we did. It's just, we have to continue to remain true to what we're comfortable with and what's going to make us happy. And I lost the why, I lost the why and why I was doing it. I was just like, I can't just keep creating videos at the mercy of what other people want. It's not going to make me happy, and it's going to be exhausting, and it's not legitimizing myself as a stand-up, which is the foundation of this passion to begin with.
No, for sure. And that's, and you're absolutely right. Like, you have to have the passion behind what you're doing, or you're going to burn yourself out, and you'll be like, what the hell am I doing? 5 years down the road, be like, I just wasted 5 years. Like, where am I going next? You know what I mean? Right. And the reality is, and when you're building a brand around you and your dog, right? Your life expectancy is a little bit longer.
Yeah. Well, we should hope.
We should hope. Right. You never know, but like that's a reality that you also have to face, and you have to like be like, okay, well, what would I do after that? You know.
It would just be amazing if my dog's life supersedes mine, and the vlog just takes off, and I was the problem the whole time.
It would just blow up. Could you imagine? Just be like, oh, there goes Stella, just blowing up all over the internet. Who was that guy that was with her again?
The third time you have us on the podcast, I'm not there. It's her. And she's like, yeah, no, I had to ask my co-host to step down. I mean, he died, but he stepped down.
We had the conversation first. It was a hard conversation. That's amazing. But you have to be super aware of that stuff. Was there a fear when making this shift, or were you like, screw it, like this is what I'm doing?
It is a fear, but what your mental health and where your heart is at, that ultimately outweighs the fear, but just barely. I'm talking like, election, 51% of me. This is the way I feel my whole career is I think I'm 51% optimistic. I think I'm 49% pessimistic, and that sometimes can lead you to making decisions that you wouldn't otherwise make, but you're glad that you did, because and making that shift falls under, that decision making percentage is, I was nervous that I was going to lose a lot of the people who were watching, but then at the end of the day, I was like, but I would much rather have less people pay attention to me for me than more people pay attention to a thing that I'm not passionate about, because then that's going to start to show through in the work. Yeah. It's going to start to show, and it did. It started to show through where sometimes I was sitting down to film, and I like Mesa, my assistant was like, so what do you want to film about today? And I was just like, I don't know. Like, I just don't know. I don't have a thing. I'm burnt up there. So that's what I was going back to. What I was saying is I think in its own way, you have to learn to adapt so you can create, so you can sustain what works for you. And honestly, I was neglecting a big part of myself for the sake of not wanting to make that scary transition that we all have to make as entrepreneurs. I was so afraid to make what I knew was going to be better for the business, which was showcasing a lot of what I can do as a stand-up, which a lot of my online audience wasn't even they weren't even aware. Like some people don't even draw the parallel to me having done stand-up or me doing America's Got Talent or Conan or any of that. Like people sometimes just find me or find us, and then when I show them that we do stand-up, then it's like, oh, I just had no idea.
Yeah. You actually being on Conan was the greatest gift to my YouTube channel, by the way. So my YouTube channel does nothing. All my episodes they're all on YouTube, but it's just like a photo along with the audio, because I just don't promote that. But your episode, along with some earlier episodes, we had the full form, like us interviewing you video. That has 21,000 views. The interview video that we did 2 years ago, but and it like blew up after Conan. It was like, what the hell? What is going on? And then all my other videos have like 9 views. That's the algorithm for you. It was the greatest gift to that one video on my YouTube channel.
That's so funny. I'm glad my Conan appearance helped your career. That's good.
How big was that though? Like getting on Conan and being able to do that?
Oh, dude, that's actually, that's such a great question, because so many people ask me if I was more nervous to do Conan than I was to do America's Got Talent. Wow. And I feel like I had learned so much, since doing America's Got Talent. So I think those appearances are, 2 years apart. But, with America's Got Talent, it was a thing that was like, it's family friendly. So, it's a show that's being watched by so many families, and it's like, oh, and there's that guy who is that cute young man with that speech thing, and I did almost all the jokes I did on America's Got Talent were on about my voice and about my stutter because I was afraid to make that transition that we're talking about saying like, you know, let's show them what else it is that you can do, even though that's more risky. And for me, when I was on the show, what I was doing was advancing me in the show, so I didn't want to really change it. Now Conan, while I did a joke up top to help like address my stutter, I had then moved on to something else just to be like, hey, by the way, I do jokes that are not that, which ultimately made me super happy. I was very proud of myself to do that. But I was very nervous. I was more nervous to do Conan than I was America's Got Talent because that show's watched by peers. That's watched by other comics. Yeah. So you can't really get away with thin writing or something that's like a throwaway joke that's maybe pandered or something that, you know, it's got to have some real, you know, not to say that I didn't have that on America's Got Talent, but it's just a different audience.
Yeah. So. I'm actually obsessed with Comedy Brain, and it's something I talked about with Bert Kreischer as he would just stop randomly in the middle of my interview and start writing stuff down in a notebook. And I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, he's like, oh, sorry. I'm writing down jokes in my notebook as we're talking about stuff. I'm just obsessed with the way people look at things. And when you look at the two things you create content for, you have comedy, which is long term. Like you can do the same set for a year as a stand-up comic, and you know, because you're traveling, you're seeing new audiences, so on and so forth. Hopefully it ends with a Netflix special or whatever the case may be. And then with YouTube, like you said, you could sit down one day and be like, I have no idea what I'm going to create. So your brain works at two different speeds, I imagine. So how do you go about creating this content both for YouTube and for your stand-up?
That's really, I mean, it's, I feel, and tell me if this is you as well. Like I'm sure you have an idea for what it is that you are going to talk about on your podcast, or you've got a direction, you know? And I'm very similar. I need to have, that's what grounds the idea, is to be like, I know I can go somewhere. I need to know what it's going to be. And I need to know in advance so I can better plan and make it worth doing. But because it's so perpetual and cyclical, you almost can't plan for that. Sometimes something happens in the news or in whatever political climate or whatever climate, anything that can happen can ultimately affect your views. Like sometimes there'll be a tragedy that happens, and whether you decide to even upload or post that day can sometimes happen. Where you're just like, I can't, because out of respect for what's happening, I don't want to do that. Yeah. You know? Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. That's a whole other thing where like something can happen in the news that's tragic, and you're over here like, hey, check out my video. It just doesn't. That doesn't work. You know? Right. And so sometimes what I've learned about doing something for stand-up and doing something for YouTube is, you know, I'm traveling so much for stand-up, but sometimes there'll be a little idea that happens while I'm on the road, and I think, oh, that could be perfect for my channel. I mean, there'll be something that happens that, like, it's almost like you just have to be open to anything happening last minute. And that's what I was saying when I say you can't plan too far in advance. It's like, it's almost like trying to plan a chess match from the beginning of the game. You know, you can't, it's like you got to think a move ahead. You know, there's, to give an example that grounds this is like, you know, there was one time I had this huge long travel day, where I was traveling to Florida, I think, from the West Coast to do this gig. I land, I think, super late, and I rushed to go do the gig. I barely could charge my phone. I had the GPS. The gig is like an hour outside of where I landed. I drive, I go do the gig, and then I have to drive back to the city that's near the airport. So an hour back after I landed, to fly out the next morning to go back to the West Coast. And I'm trying to go to sleep, and my dog is on the couch, and she's whining that she couldn't get invited into like the bed with me. And I was like, dude, you've never been in the bed. So I don't know why, just cause you've had a rough travel day, you think that like you get the comfort of the bed. I barely get the comfort of sleep right now. So she was being very vocal in what she was doing. So I just started to record her and I started to record me and her, just kind of with her in the background, with me kind of in the bed and just kind of making commentary in that moment. We edited that together. And on like Facebook alone, it's got like 11 million views or something stupid.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's a great way, I think, of being like, oh, here's a little gift. Like let's try to make a meal out of it. Here's a little, like, here's something that could otherwise just have been a silly thing that you could have posted, but let's try and edit it together to say, hey, here's this guy's dog, and hey, here's his relationship to his dog that would elevate their humorous relationship.
Sure.
So, yeah, yeah.
And that's it. And that's actually a great example of like when you're content creators, people want glimpses into your life that you wouldn't normally share. Like, I feel like we go to a place where it's like, why am I even talking about this?
Yeah, it's so weird, man. Like, I struggle with being even like I'm super personal, and I always want people to feel that I'm a genuine person. But I have struggled sometimes. Like, I struggle sometimes. Like, we're on Skype right now. I struggle showing you the camera in my house. I've got there's cutie oranges on my counter. I don't want this guy to be like, whoa, this guy has cuties? That's the weirdest thing. Like, this guy needs his vitamin C in small amounts. What a weirdo. I've got hookah right there. Sometimes I do hookah. I feel like my audience, if they were to find out, oh my God, sometimes he ingests peach flavor. I have a lot of fruit back here, Justin. That's what I'm saying. I've got there's dice, there's dog food. Like, there's a hammer right there. I'm weird. I'm a person. That's what I'm afraid to say. I'm afraid to show people that I have shit, and that I don't have I don't know. Like, so it's, that's another thing that I think in the next year I'm trying to expand even more on, is being like, hey, here's a little bit more of my personal life, because I feel like that's a thing that a lot of my audience is missing, because I'm afraid, like we talked about.
No, and it's true too, because and sometimes when you get into like with this long form discussion where you sometimes do a super deep dive, like actually if you go back and listen, I'm actually really proud of the interview we did 2 years ago, because it was a very serious conversation about your life and some of the struggles that you went through and so on and so forth. But when you get into those conversations with people, you start to share things on your own that you're like, why did I just share that? Like, going back to, I keep bringing this up, but going back to the Bert episode, both Bert Kreischer and I shared the story of how we lost our virginity. And we share this during the interview, and I'm not thinking who's going to listen. A week later, I run into my friend and her husband, and my friend goes, my mom now knows how you lost your virginity, because her mom listens to every episode. And I was like, oh, that's a little weird. Like, I didn't think about that as I was just having a conversation. I was like, oh, shit. Yeah, so everybody listening to this now will go back and listen to that episode and be like, oh, what a loser. Good. 2.5 seconds. Got it. But with, it becomes this kind of weird balancing act. And you had also said earlier how with the podcast and with your YouTube and stand-up, you kind of map out what it is you can talk about, but you have to be willing to go in either direction. And it's really funny because people ask if I jot down questions, and I don't, but I do jot down bullet points before I hop on a call, like right before, just to kind of keep me in line. And so I literally wrote down the first 3 bullet points: growth, strategy, comedy brain, we've touched on all of those. So this has become like exactly the conversation I thought was going to happen. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you never know what's going to go next, right?
Right.
But in the last 2 years, if I think about growth, and if I can think about, I didn't listen to the full episode recently. I went back and listened to snippets to kind of grab some sound bites. But I think you were working on a comedy special that Howie did, like the intro. I didn't see anything come out. What happened with that, and what's kind of the next part in your journey?
So what's kind of, I mean, that's so funny that, wow, that really puts into perspective the timeline. What had happened with that is, I had made, to be candid, I had agreed to a deal that I wasn't aware I was agreeing to. So it's kind of a thing that, like, everything got held up in post, everything got shot, how he came to do it. It ended up I was very proud of myself for having had done it, because I had toured with all that material, and then I wanted to dump all of it. So that the best way to do that is with a special. And in the contract with the team I had at the time, I didn't have like a lawyer, and I didn't have necessarily a manager who I felt was in my corner. So that special ended up getting canned and not getting its distribution because of a contractual disagreement, and one that I thought I was agreeing to verbally, and then when it came to what was divvied up between the two parties, me and the producer, it just wasn't fair. I mean, it ostensibly involved giving up my intellectual property, which as a comedian you can never do.
Yeah,
you just
that's all you have.
Exactly. Your material is your intellectual property. So they wanted to run the deal as though it was like a movie, and where that could happen if you gave up intellectual property for writers to then put into whatever the script is to be produced. But I'm the writer, so you're trying to, I guess, get credit. You're trying to, I guess, get credit on a thing that I am that's my job. So it was a learning experience for sure. And it was a thing that, that you just kind of learn from it. If that special ever does kind of see the light of day, I'd be happy to, try to special maybe next year and see if there's a way that we can do like a then and now kind of thing. Like, oh, look at how much he's, what's changed, how much he's either grown or gone in decline since then.
That's actually a really great concept.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, that special was shot 2.5 years ago. So that to me would be otherwise it's just material that's not, it's not used. Yeah. So, and I don't use any of those jokes anymore. And a lot of it was just about saying, like, a lot of it was about, in a way, me like saying goodbye to all the jokes that I do about my stutter. Even though I still occasionally will do something just so the audience is, just to kind of introduce it, or if there's a new take on it that doesn't, for me, feel, fabricated or phony, then maybe I'll do it. But for the most part, that was kind of what happened.
That's awesome. So what I've witnessed over the last 2 years in your career and your journey and your projections of where you're going next is true success, right? And so we all define success in different ways. So my question for you is, what's your definition of success, and what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure it?
Wow, you hit me with the follow-up. That was great. That was a collegiate level question. Jeez.
It was. So this is it. Actually, if this is not a good answer, we're not even airing this. So
okay, well, good. Well, can we get the other one that we recorded that we didn't record on the? All right. Let's see. 3. So let's see. What do I think is? What would I say is success? And then the 3 things that I do to try and secure it.
Yeah.
This is gonna sound. This is where I'm probably gonna lose your mom's your friend's mom. Because a lot of people are gonna hate that I give this answer. Maybe, and maybe not. Maybe it just speaks. I don't know. I think a lot of people might look at what it is that I have or what it is that I get to do. Comedians, YouTubers, anybody. Would look at what it is that I do or have and say that I'm successful. I would not say that I am successful, at least to where I want to be.
Sure.
I guess I could say I've had successes. That's different, though. That's not the word successful in my opinion. There are a lot of comedians who have been doing it for, like Bert and, like Bill, and like a lot of people who've done it for 20 something years, and they've developed, TV shows and had movies and had their own successful podcasts or other things that have helped sustain them and really kind of make the skeleton of their career. And for me, I feel like I'm just still so young in what it is that I want to be able to do. Like, I want to be able to do those things. I want to be able to, kind of do, like an hour a year and then just get rid of it. That's somebody like, even like Sebastian Maniscalco. He's so good at that. He's just so good at just being like, here's a new hour and then I'm going to dump it, and I'm going to special and I'm going to dump it. Here's a new hour. And he's
blown up over the last couple of years.
He sure has.
Yeah.
And and he's also someone who's, 20 years, 18 years. I don't know how long he's been doing it.
Yeah.
And for me, like I keep saying to myself, there's one of Sebastian's specials where you can see Jerry Seinfeld in the audience. And to me, as a goal, I would be like, if I had one of the comedians whom I idolize in the audience at my special, I should look at it and go, I'm successful.
Yeah.
That's the success. I still can't. I don't know what I still feel like if that were to happen, I would be like, then I'll be successful. And then it's like you create another thing that goes, okay, if I have that, then I'll be successful. And it's this constant thing that keeps yourself titillated, but also is not really good for yourself, your mental health, to just constantly be like, nah, you didn't do it yet, man. You didn't do it yet. And that keeps pushing you to hopefully achieve more. But I don't know. It's, I guess I would say no, I'm not as successful as I would like to be, but yes, I've had six successes. And then the three things that I do every day. One thing that I do is a very practical thing, I guess, is I meditate every day. I just feel like I need it. I mean, if anybody's probably gathered anything from this interview, it's that I my mind goes a lot, and then or I'm always to the next thing. I think of myself almost more like a business person and a strategist, and then a comedian. It's like I have all these things in my head that it's like, if I can get all these things done and I can market them appropriately, then I'll be able to fulfill what it is that I can do to keep it going as a business person. So I meditate at some point in the day. I do this thing. It's transcendental meditation. A lot of I guess comedians have kind of do it. Like, I think Seinfeld does it, and I think Larry David, or there's a few people who just kind of do it, which helps revitalize me for the second part of the day. Yeah. If you're someone who is running your own business, you spend so much of your day making sure everyone else is doing their job, and then you have a little bit of time to do what it is that you want to do. So that's one thing that's very practical that I do. Something that's related to, I guess my career is specifically is, I write all the time, and I write on top of if I have I'll usually put like a to-do list, and on that to-do list will be the last thing will be writing, and then under writing I'll put the bullet points of the things that I want to write. Yeah. And you got to do it in a way that's you got to do it in a way that's smart, because you can't keep putting it off. And that's why I have like the animated show that I do on my YouTube channel that keeps me accountable, because I say I'm going to put that up every other week for a whole year or whatever. And then, and by doing that helps, strengthen your accountability, and it hopefully helps strengthen the reason why you did it. Right. So that's another thing that I'll do, is I'll write out the to-do list. That's the second thing. I'll write out the to-do list, and I'll write what it is I have to write, or what it is I want to explore, just for shits and gigs. And then the third thing, which is going to sound which I've only kind of more recently explored, is just trying new things that you wouldn't normally do. Despite this interview, for what this interview might, I guess, lead on, is I'm pretty introverted. I'm a very to myself person when I'm not talking to people, and that oftentimes is difficult, because then you become comfortable with being like, I can just be inside and be by myself and not explore and not expand my comfort zone. But if you don't expand your comfort zone, or if you don't do things that are not within the routine, then you're never going to grow. And if you don't grow, you're never going to be able to write what it is about the things that you grow. So it's like sometimes I can write out a whole to-do list and then the things that I want to write, and I don't have anything because because yesterday was the same thing as today, and you can't grow that way. Yeah. What I'm learning is I say yes to things before I can rationalize why I shouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a stupid, that's almost a stupid thing to be like, oh, you say yes to things before, but it's almost the same with shows. People will be like, Drew, do you want to come do my show? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, okay, it's outside and there's no people and the microphone is a plantain. They're like, I already said yes. So
I'm stuck. I got to show up now. Dude, I hear you. Exactly. I love all that stuff. And, a lot of, growth in general, whether you're an introvert, extrovert, whatever the case may be, happens in the outside world, but it is very easy to just stay in. It's easy to sit there and get stuck in your own world, but you're not going anywhere if you do that.
Yeah, it's so easy to just be like, yesterday was so great. I want to do it again. I want to do yesterday. That's all I want to do. I want to do the same. I want to live the same day every day. I want to have.
I want a non-festive Christmas. By the way, we're recording this the day after Christmas, so he just wants to live that day over and over again. Yeah.
I don't even. Yeah, that's how much I enjoy not having new things. So, in that way, that might also make for why it is that I am the way that. That's maybe that. I don't know. I don't want to say that that's what makes me a comedian, but it makes it easy to complain about things. I'm always bitching about things that come up because they're new and I don't like new. I don't want, people say to most people, they'll be like, oh, let's be open to whatever this experience could be. We're going to go do this thing or this or whatever. To me, I want to immediately poke holes in why it's terrible and why it can go wrong. So, lots of stand-up would say, or lots of stand-up is at its origin is just complaining, and that's I don't know, maybe that's why there's a good combination for why that is my life. But yeah,
dude, I love all of that. So I wrap up all of these podcasts in a similar way, and that's wrapping up with 5 rapid fire questions. But before we get there, how do people find you online? Where do they search on YouTube? Where do they get your tour dates, etc.?
Sure. My Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter is all the same. It's the Drew Lynch. I didn't choose that. Someone else. Drew Lynch was taken, so I had to do something douchey like the Drew Lynch. I'm
the one you want.
Yeah. The Drew Lynch, I guess, and then you can type in Drew Lynch on YouTube as well, and there it is. And then my website is drewlynch.com, and that's where you find my shows. And then don't go.
Amazing.
All right, I remember these rapid fire questions. This was so nerve-wracking. Remember I told you I don't like surprises, and
Yeah, well, you should remember that there's 5 rapid fire questions since you've done this before.
I know.
The only one I remember is we asked you your least favorite word, and you said banana, which I didn't realize the banana thing before the interview. That just happened to be a question at the time that we asked. But that's not one of them this time. I tried to switch it up just a little bit. But the first one is, what is your favorite smell?
Gasoline.
Wait, is that legit?
Yeah, the smell of gas? Yeah, are you kidding me? Yeah, that's great. Wait, can I change my answer?
I feel like that was a joke. Most people don't say gasoline is my favorite smell.
It's a great smell. What? That's a good precedent for the rest of the questions, is heavy judgment on the face.
Did I just go, wait, hold on, really? Dude, I asked that question one time to somebody, and she said her cats. And I was like, I'm sorry? Your cats are your favorite smell? Answer.
I like cats doused in gasoline. That's my favorite smell.
Terrible. Right. What is the one trait that's non-negotiable in any of your friends?
Oh, they can't bitch to me about the money thing. Do you know what I'm saying? We're like, oh, well, last time, remember I paid for that thing where you did that, and then you paid, so now it's someone who keeps a tab on your relationship the whole time. It's like, dude, will you I bought you a $20 gift and yours was $21.99, and now you're like, well, the $1.99, you can owe me. You can owe me. I was like, I kick you in the kneecap. You see what that does for you. I hate that. I hate it so much.
That's amazing. If you could have dinner with one person, living or dead, who would it be?
Ooh, hopefully living.
Well,
that would make for a lame dinner. Oh man, that is was it Michael Bublé? He's great. That sounds weird. There's something about it as a man crush.
Let me tell you a little something. So I have a man crush on Michael Bublé, like legitimately. So when I was in LA, I actually got coffee with Mesa and then walked down to his Hollywood Star Walk of Fame thing because he was doing it the same day. Yeah. And I was like, if I'm in LA this time, I'm going to go to this thing.
Amazing.
Yes. Dude, I'm in love with that man.
Yeah. I just want to hear him talk. He's just, I think that's why. It's a pretty shallow reason to give, but yeah, he's it. Yeah,
I also spoke at an event the next day and somebody goes, who's like the one guest that you want on the show? And immediately I went, Michael Bublé. The second I interview him, the show's over.
Yeah.
I don't need to do anything else after that. Anyway, next question. At the end of your life, if you could only be remembered for one sentence, what would it be?
He worked harder than anyone in his house. I don't know. That had a comedic end. I don't know. He worked very hard.
Awesome. Now I wrap up every single episode with this one question, which I was kind of debating whether to switch it up or not, but I'll ask you the same exact question as I did 2 years ago. Since this show is called The Growth Now Movement, what has been your biggest moment of growth in your life?
Oh, God, dude. I know this is rapid. Sorry.
No, you're good. You can go as long as you want on this one. This one's you.
Okay. All right. Say it again. The biggest moment of growth?
Your biggest moment of growth, yeah.
Oh, damn. I would say my biggest moment of growth. Oh God. I would say my biggest moment of growth is learning that things that happen don't define who it is that I am. Mm. So that sounds probably more general than it is, but I think that's just because I'm coming off of the rapid fire thing. I need to give an answer to satiate you, then I can explain. In my life, having a head injury where I stuttered thereafter, and then making a huge career leap by exploiting that stutter in a way that was like, I can make jokes and make fun of myself, and that's what people want. That was a thing that really I was defined by for so long, and I was I have clinged to things that are working rather than just being like, there's one variable that doesn't seem to change in all of it, and it's just who I am. Mm. I'm someone who's adaptable. I work hard, and I'm strong, and I make choices based on intuition and things that ultimately expand my comfort zone. So if I could say the answer is that the things don't necessarily define me that happen, and I'm the one true constant that continues to show growth, shed light on my ability to grow. So
awesome, man. Yeah. Drew, thank you so much for coming on, spending time with me and my audience, and just thank you so much for sharing your message, man. I'm excited to watch the next 2 years, and maybe we'll have you back on. Maybe.
Oh wow, yeah. Well, yeah. If you're not like super huge by then, which you will be.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.